Hello and a very good evening. You're watching the news at 6 on Rajya Sabha television with me, Frank Pereira. Here are this evening's headlines. BSP keeps up pressure on Union Minister VK Singh in the Rajya Sabha. Party chief Mayawati seeks his dismissal from the Union cabinet for alleged anti-Dalit remarks. Also in the House, Samajwadi Party takes on RSS chief for comment on Ram Temple. Party stages protest for what it calls attempt to communalize the atmosphere. Chennai continues to battle heavy floods. Thousands stranded without food or electricity. Relief teams work round the clock to retrieve situation. Delhi government suggests way out for smog-filled national capital, proposes that odd and even number cars should fly on alternate days. And US officials zero in on terror links in California shooting, claim that gunman Syed Rizwan Farooq was in contact with known Islamic extremists on social media. Well, BSP members unleashed a scathing attack on Union Minister VK Singh in the Rajya Sabha on Friday for his alleged anti-Dalit remarks. BSP chief Mayawati pressed for his ouster from the Union cabinet, a demand backed by the Congress. The government, however, stressed that his remarks were not laden with anti-Dalit sentiments.
Union Minister VK Singh was at the centre of the ruckus in Rajya Sabha for a second consecutive day on Friday. The BSP upped the ante against the Minister of State for External Affairs for his contentious dog analogy in the wake of the killing of 2 Dalit children in Haryana. BSP chief Mayawati demanded that Singh be sacked immediately.
श्री VK सिंह के मामले में दलित प्रकरण को लेकर सरकार का जो रवैया हमें देखने के लिए मिला है, अति दुखद में अति चिंताजनक भी है.
1 minute. The Congress party also joined ranks with the BSP and launched an offensive against VK Singh. Leader of opposition in the House, Ghulam Nabi Azad, urged the Prime Minister to take action against Singh.
एक मंत्री मिस्टर VK सिंह जी अगर उस पीड़ित दलित बच्चों की हत्या को बजाय उसको कंडम करने के लिए दलित कुत्तों के साथ कंपेयर करते हैं, उस मंत्री को एक पल भी मंत्रिमंडल का साथी नहीं होना चाहिए, बल्कि उसे पार्लियामेंट का मेंबर भी नहीं होना चाहिए.
MOS Parliamentary Affairs Mukhtar Abbas Naqvi, however, attempted to shield the former army chief, saying he never meant to disrespect Dalits. Naqvi also reiterated the government's pro-Dalit stance.
VK सिंह जी ने बार-बार इस बात को स्पष्ट किया है कि उन्होंने ऐसा कुछ नहीं कहा है जो किसी भी दलित समाज के अपमान का कारण हो.
The proceedings of the House were stalled amid protests from BSP members, with the question hour also being washed out. The BSP members stormed into the well, leading to several adjournments. Kriti Mishra's report for Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, in the Rajya Sabha, the Samajwadi Party expressed its anger at the reported comments of RSS chief Mohan Bhagwat on the Ram Temple in Ayodhya. The Samajwadi Party accused the government of vitiating the secular environment of the country. The government, however, denied the charge.
As soon as the House met for the day, SPMP Naresh Agarwal was on his feet, raising the reported statement of Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh chief Mohan Bhagwat on the construction of a Ram temple. Party leader Ram Gopal Yadav pointed out that the case was still pending in the courts. He alleged that a communally sensitive situation was being fomented.
देश की एकता और अखंडता के लिए बहुत खतरनाक है. न्यायालय में लंबित होने के बाद भी बेरोक को आरएसएस चीफ का बयान देना ये दर्शाता है कि सरकार की मिलीभगत के तहत ही ये सब किया जा रहा है.
MOS Parliamentary Affairs Mukhtar Abbas Naqvi rushed to the government's defense. He said that top court's decision will be supreme, but insisted that citizens have a fundamental right to reiterate their commitment for the construction of a Ram temple.
राम मंदिर के निर्माण का मुद्दा और उस मुद्दे पर का विवाद जो है वो माननीय न्यायालय में है और न्यायालय के निर्णय का हम सब सम्मान करते हैं, हम सबको सम्मान करना चाहिए. जहां तक राम मंदिर के निर्माण के संकल्प की बात है, उस संकल्प को दोहराने का सबको अधिकार है और वो संकल्प को दोहराने का उनको उनको जो है वो फंडामेंटल राइट है।
SP members reached the well blaming the government and the RSS. Congress members also lent support to their demand. The SP's protests coupled with the BSP's attack on VK Singh forced several adjournments. Mohan Bhagwat had reportedly stated it was time to prepare the ground to build Ram Temple in Ayodhya. Kriti Mishra, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, join me for a chat right now to talk about what's likely to happen in this winter session of Parliament is senior journalist Priya Ranjan Dash. A very good evening and thank you for joining me on the program. You know, the opposition seems to be raising issue after issue on a daily basis, and you know, the House and the proceedings in the House are getting disturbed as a result of this. The government is looking to push forth the GST bill in this winter session of Parliament and is trying to get some kind of consensus to push this key reform through. Do you see that happening?
I don't think there are any differences on the GST bill as such. GST is not an issue of contention between the ruling NDA and the main opposition Congress, except for perhaps the left parties which have an ideological issue with GST. There is no substantial difference. Everybody wants GST. There seems to be a national consensus on GST, and it's been like that ever since GST was conceptualized in 2002. So GST is not the issue. The issue of contentions are elsewhere, and they are in the area of be it the so-called debate over intolerance, or the action against motor mouths associated or linked to the ruling establishment, or issues like that, on which is actually holding the entire economic agenda, legislative agenda, to ransom. So if you have to see progress on the economic legislation, it is the solution needs to be found elsewhere, because there are no contentions insofar as the broad economic legislative agenda is concerned. That has never been like that. And as we know, GST bill has been held up, and when BJP was in the opposition, Prime Minister Modi himself laid the charge to block GST, because his colleague Mr. Amit Shah had to go to jail because of the fake encounter charge against him, and that was the reason why GST was held ransom. Now you have a lot of extraneous issues at the moment, which seems to be holding up the economic legislative agenda. Unless you have progress or reconciliatory approach with regard to those issues, I feel that GST and other reform agenda may be held up for quite some time.
So what you're saying is, you know, the government needs to go the extra mile, and a little bit of give and take needs to be there between the opposition, principally the Congress and the BJP, and then we can see some of these reform agendas being pushed forward.
I think that's going to be the approach. If you have to make progress, quick progress with regard to the economic legislative agenda, we need to sort out this this confrontation which we are witnessing with regard to some other issues.
Indeed, you know, and as far as the GST bill itself is concerned, now even if it is passed in this winter session of Parliament, do you see it being a reality, as the Finance Minister has been saying that, you know, he wants to roll it out by April 1st, 2016? Even if it is passed in this winter session, do you see that happening?
It will be a race against time if it is passed in this winter session, because after the constitutional amendment bill is passed, it has to be ratified by half the states, and then you will need the GST legislation proper to be passed, and then you need the infrastructure to be in place for the tax to be introduced from April 1st, 2016. But it doesn't really matter if the April 1st deadline is missed. You know, it could come into force even after April 1st, but during the next financial year. So it's quite possible that we can still have GST next financial year, provided it now crosses this very important barrier that we witness in Parliament, in Rajya Sabha in particular, the Constitutional Amendment Bill.
Indeed, it is a very important barrier, and it remains to be seen what's likely to happen in the next couple of weeks, or for that matter, next 3 weeks. But we'll keep our eyes on all the proceedings and keep beaming them back to you. Priyaranjan Dashtos, thank you so much for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. Moving on now, of course, the Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Friday said that his government was taking states on board for development of the country. He told an audience in Delhi at an event in Delhi that the main focus of his government was on implementing the NDA government's initiatives and schemes. Delivering the inaugural address, the Prime Minister put states first, while insisting that Delhi alone can't be the sole mover.
भारत को आगे बढ़ना है तो दिल्ली से देश आगे नहीं बढ़ सकता है। राज्य और दिल्ली दोनों मिलकर के कंधे से कंधा मिलाकर के चले, एक दिशा में चले, गति समान बनाने की कोशिश करें, परिणाम अपने आप निकल आएंगे।
In a 40-minute-long speech that was replete with humor, Modi reaffirmed India's status as one of the fastest-growing economies in the world.
आज जो वैश्विक परिस्थिति है, उसमें बाय एंड लार्ज इस बात को स्वीकृति मिली हुई है कि दुनिया की बड़ी इकोनॉमीज में भारत सबसे तेज गति से आगे बढ़ने वाला देश है। और जब भारत सबसे आगे बढ़ने वाला देश माना गया है, तो दूसरी तरफ देखें तो विश्व की स्थिति पूरी तरह स्लो डाउन की है।
Talking about MOUs signed with 100 cities to promote LED lights, the Prime Minister claimed it will save 21,500 megawatts of power.
जिस दिन ये 100 शहरों का काम पूरा हो जाएगा LED का, उस दिन इस देश में 21,500 मेगावाट बिजली बचेगी। 21,000 मेगावाट बिजली अगर मोदी कारखाना लगाता है तो हिंदुस्तान टाइम्स में तो मैंने वो भाग्य होगा मैं नहीं कह सकता हूं, लेकिन किसी न किसी अखबार में तो हेडलाइन हो जाती है कि मोदी ने 21,500 मेगावाट का बिजली का कारखाना लगा दिया। क्योंकि हमने वो सोचा है 21,500 मेगावाट बिजली का कारखाना है, 1.25 लाख करोड़ रुपया का इन्वेस्टमेंट, मतलब कि देश का 1.25 लाख करोड़ रुपया बच गया।
Modi, who led the BJP to a massive victory in the 2014 general elections, also gave credit to the people for giving the NDA a clear mandate. He said a stable government was necessary for economic growth. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television. Well, Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Akhilesh Yadav claimed the Samajwadi Party alliance with the Congress was possible if his father Mulayam Singh was projected as the Prime Minister with Rahul Gandhi as his deputy. Akhilesh was responding to a question at the Hindustan Times Leadership Summit. He was asked if his party will be open to an alliance with the Congress in the next national election. Congress Vice President Rahul Gandhi, who was in the audience, seemed to make light of the comment. Akhilesh also ruled out any possibility of any alliance with the BJP.
मैं समाजवादी हूं और आप ये कहते हो कि नेताजी की मैं डांट सुनता हूं, तो मैं भी चाहूंगा कि नेताजी को भी कुछ उनके भी सपने पूरे हों, उनके भी काम करूं। वो प्रधानमंत्री लगे, ये उप प्रधानमंत्री बन जाए, मैं सहमत हूं उनके साथ। मैं सहमत हूं, मैं अभी गठबंधन बना दूंगा।
Well, it's time for a short break now, but still to come, India joins list of countries to be threatened by Islamic State. Details of that and much more on the other side. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.
After the deluge, a struggle to get back on track. Chennai stares at challenges ahead. Is the worst still to come? Watch the big picture at 6:30 p.m. on Rajya Sabha Television.
Welcome back. You're watching Rajya Sabha television. Well, Chennai experienced some relief after days of heavy rain with a lull in rainfall leading to reduced water levels in the city. But the Tamil Nadu capital continues to be cut off from the rest of the country. Essential commodities are hard to come by, even though Army and Air Force personnel are trying to bridge that gap.
Flood-battered Chennai breathed a sigh of relief on Friday as a break in rain overnight brought down water levels. Water level in both the Adayar and Kumbh rivers came down, easing large-scale flooding. Chennai is likely to receive intermittent rain over the next 24 hours, even as coastal and interior Tamil Nadu is likely to receive more rain.
Chennai is unlikely to get any heavy rainfall, although the heavy rainfall of the order of 70 millimeter or 80 millimeter, this type of rainfall will continue over Kudalur, Nagapattinam and Puducherry districts over the next 48 hours. After 48 hours, we are expecting a bit increase in the rainfall over Chennai, in the districts of North Coastal Tamil Nadu also, but still it will not be very heavy.
Even though most of the capital city is without power, it was restored in several areas that were not waterlogged. The communication network has also improved. But Chennai city still remains cut off from the rest of the country, with all air, rail and road transport services suspended. There is no public transport to speak of.
We have no water supply and power supply for the last thing. We are suffering very lot for doing the bank job. Bank work, being a service branch, we have to do all the things.
Southern Railway has cancelled all interstate and intrastate train services till Saturday. The airport too will stay shut till Sunday. The Grand Southern Trunk Road linking Chennai with Madurai and beyond is also cut off after several breaches in Kanchipuram. Prices of milk, vegetables and food items are sky high as essential commodities are hard to come by. The Indian Air Force and the Army is trying to close the gap between demand and supply, but it is clearly not enough, seeing the devastation that has been wreaked on the state. If the situation improved a little in Chennai, the coastal district of Cuddalore got no such reprieve. It is one of the worst affected areas still and continues to receive heavy rainfall. Fishermen have been warned not to go to sea. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Meanwhile, Chennai continues to reel under heavy floods following record-breaking rainfall and overflowing lakes. Thousands were left homeless or stranded in their homes without food or electricity. Telephone services too took a hit in many areas. Relief and rescue teams have been working round the clock, but the situation is still grim. Here's a report. Water levels receded in Chennai after a pause in heavy rainfall, giving rescue teams a chance to step up operations to evacuate people stranded across the city. The military evacuated more than 2,000 residents stranded in the city on Thursday as a death toll from the flooding crossed 280.
We've got all the boats on which our personnel, along with ready-to-eat meals and water supplies, will be deployed in the flood-affected areas. We are right now intending to deploy north of Adayar River and move south towards the river and provide these relief material to the personnel marooned or stranded in the waterlogged regions of the city.
Director General of the NDRF, VK Singh, said that the rescue teams plan to reach out to the stranded people across Chennai as they have found some dry ground.
इंटेंसिटी ऑफ रेन है वो रिड्यूस कर गया है और हमारी टीम आज एग्रेसिवली उन सभी इलाकों में जाएगी जहां पे लोग अभी भी फंसे हुए हैं. वैसे उनकी संख्या बहुत कम है, लेकिन वाटर लॉगिंग है, रेन नहीं है फिर भी वाटर लॉगिंग है, उसके कारण लोगों को समस्याएं हो रही हैं.
The floods have cut off more than 3 million people from basic services and hampered rescue efforts. City authorities deployed bulldozers and bags of concrete to repair collapsed roads, while several bridges were underwater as urban lakes in the low-lying coastal city overflowed.
अभी बहुत सुधार हुआ है. उन इलाकों में जहां पानी नहीं जमा हुआ है वहां पावर रेस्टोरेशन हुआ है. कम्युनिकेशंस नेटवर्क में भी सुधार हुआ है. पिछले कई घंटों से हम अपने ऑफिसर्स से बहुत अच्छी तरह बात कर पा रहे हैं, हम अपने टीम लीडर से बात कर पा रहे हैं और कई ऐसे जगह हैं जहां पे सूख गई हैं, पानी नहीं है वहां पे और पानी के स्तर में, जल के स्तर में भी काफी गिरावट आई है.
Even as the weather cleared, water rose in many residential areas, fed by spills from 35 lakes that have risen to dangerous levels. Experts say haphazard construction work, faulty drainage and a build-up of garbage had contributed to the flooding. More than 5,000 houses were underwater, with many people still trapped on rooftops while others crowded in relief camps. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television. Well, in a bid to tackle the high pollution levels in the national capital, the Delhi government has decided to enforce the odd-even formula, which has been successful to some extent in Beijing and Paris in the past. Come January 1st, 2016, cars with odd number plates and even number plates will ply on roads on alternate days. The formula is to be applied only to private vehicles. Public vehicles will be exempt. Even though the thought behind the plan is good, its implementation could be a huge task in a metropolis like Delhi. Public transport is already inadequate and under a lot of stress. The state government claims to have a plan to enhance public transport, but it will have to be seen how successful they are in doing that. The move comes just a day after the Delhi High Court rapped the Kejriwal government on its knuckles for not having concrete plan to tackle pollution.
We will implement for some time odd and even number of vehicles operation beginning from, we'll make all efforts to start it from the 1st of January. Now to make it possible, you have understood this thing, that is an odd number of vehicles ply on a particular day and even number of vehicles ply on another day. Next question would be that because less vehicles are plying, how does public commute, and if you don't have a vehicle which cannot ply, so for that alternative arrangement or additional transport arrangements will be made.
I will not like to comment anything कि कौन गाड़ी कब चले, ये उनके विचार है, संभवतः पर्यावरण के दृष्टिकोण से ऐसा वो विचार में लाना, लेकिन ये भी देख लेना पड़ेगा कि इस प्रकार का जो एक्सपेरिमेंट है कहीं बहुत सहूलियत पर, लोगों की सहूलियत पर उसका बुरा असर ना पड़े.
Well, India has joined the list of countries that have been threatened by the Islamic State. In a latest series of e-books titled Black Flags from the Islamic State, the terror group said it will expand its presence to India as well. One of them also targeted Prime Minister Narendra Modi, calling him a right-wing Hindu nationalist. It further claimed that a movement of Hindus who kill beef-eating Muslims is growing in India. The book claimed the Paris attacks were based on the 26/11 Mumbai attacks. Around 150 Indians are under surveillance for alleged online links with the IS. Home Ministry officials had earlier spoken of 23 men joining the Islamic State, of whom 6 were reportedly killed. Well, India expressed satisfaction over the first draft of the climate change accord released in Paris today. Key negotiator at the UN Climate Summit, Ajay Mathur, said that the global community had retained almost all of India's inputs. UN Chief Ban Ki-moon has also claimed that there have been much progress in the talks.
Ahead of a climate deal, negotiators released a complex 54-page draft accord, even as they debate no less than 250 undecided points on cutting global carbon emissions. With all its inputs finding space in the draft agreement, India sought global support to bring down the cost of renewable power to reduce reliance on coal. However, financing is now the hot topic. India rejected attempts to force developing countries to contribute money for climate finance. The major sticking point is how to come up with the billions of dollars needed to finance clean energy sources at a time when emerging countries are on the road to development. UN Chief Ban Ki-moon said that the world's leading economies must keep their promises to raise $100 billion for climate financing by 2020.
In the negotiating room, there is still a lot of work to do. Key issues remain unresolved, and there is not much time left. I continue to press the developed countries to recognize their responsibility to take the lead, while urging developing countries to do more in line with their growing capabilities.
The negotiation text will now be consolidated and handed over to the presidency, after which further negotiations will be on unresolved issues. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, 2 days after the California shooting, U.S. officials are now looking at possible terror links to the attack. President Barack Obama said extremist ideologies might have motivated the killings, but they are still unclear of a motive. A U.S. intelligence official said California gunman Syed Rizwan Farook was in contact with a known Islamic extremist on social media. They have also found bombs, weapons and thousands of rounds of ammunition from his house. Investigators say that Syed Rizwan and his wife Tashfeen Malik were planning another attack. But with an overall lead of 213 runs, India is in a commanding position in the fourth and final test in Delhi. India bowled out South Africa for 121 runs in their first innings on day 2. Ravindra Jadeja recorded his fourth 5-wicket haul in tests as India bundled out the Proteas in less than 50 overs. Ravichandran Ashwin and Umesh Yadav took 2 wickets each, while Ishant Sharma chipped in with 1. A.B. de Villiers top scored for South Africa with a gritty 42, but the rest of the South African batting failed to apply themselves on a turning wicket. Well, that's it on this edition of the Bulletin. Have a good evening.